Welcome to Songs for Humanity. The three main themes in this video are self-doubt, joyful excitement, and safe havens. Every one of you probably knows that feeling when you start to doubt that you are good enough to do that thing you were so excited about at first. And sometimes even your worthiness as a respectable person altogether can feel suddenly unclear when your mind wanders into that darker place. My feelings of self-doubt usually revolve around my skills as a creative person, producing creative stuff, and my ability to focus and grind through the tasks and plans I set to myself. But people obviously have different kinds of experiences with these feelings and also different methods to overcome them. A user from the Songs for Humanity subreddit writes, "I am doubting myself constantly. Mostly it has to do with my countless projects that I have going on all the time. I don't so much doubt about my ability to do stuff, like write or draw or paint, etc. But more likely the importance and meaning of these projects. What are they for? Why I keep having new projects all the time? Why nothing changes in my life even if I do these countless projects? Should I stop doing them? What is the purpose of my whole life to begin with? By the time I get to the last question, I'm usually so depressed that I stop working altogether. I just lie on the floor and think about life and death and whether or not God exists and all these unanswerable things." And then they go on to explain how they still manage to overcome it and get to a normal state of mind, usually by spending time in nature. Yeah, when you stop to look life in the eyes, it can seem very random and just there. Like for me, I sometimes end up living in a sort of a bubble, and inside that bubble is my social stuff, family stuff, work stuff, some hobby stuff, and all these practical things that have somehow ended up being closest to me in my everyday life. And the bubble can feel very big, especially when there's a lot of things going on in life. It can feel like that's all there is. But sometimes when I take a step back and start to think about things, the bubble starts shrinking, and it shrinks and it just lays on the ground and becomes mundane and grey looking, and the world around the bubble keeps getting bigger and bigger, and I'm just there standing next to the bubble, and I feel like I'm just a brittle, cold shell of a person looking around, trying and failing to make sense of things. When I get depressed, I like to go deep into something quite everyday, even trivial doing. I read some classic comics that I've read 16 times, or eradicate weed in my garden, or do laundry. In deeper depression, it is time to take a long walk in the meadows, headwind with sleet if possible. When the situation gets very bad, I listen to Bach's Goldberg variations, or maybe the Second Symphony of Sibelius. After listening, a thick slice of rye bread and butter is all that I need to go forward, with my melancholy that follows me like a little dog anyway. I think it's a really endearing way of thinking to see one's melancholy as this cute little doggo that eagerly follows you around. It's always good to make the effort to see the positive sides in things, and that's just the kind of slight lightheartedness that can make the biggest difference. I mean, generally speaking, life shouldn't be taken too seriously anyway. I also strongly agree with this user about the function of self-doubt in life. I am of the view, based on my own experiences, that while an uncontrollable tsunami of self-doubt can be painful and destructive, a little occasional dose is in fact desirable and healthy. In my opinion, self-doubt acts as a reasonable inoculum against things like ignorance, pretension and conceit, and seems to me therefore to be the hallmark of all thinking people. Nowadays it's quite common to hear successful people talking about not letting your doubts come in the way of your endeavors in life, that you need to just believe in yourself and it will all work out. And it's good advice, but I think it could be worded a bit differently to better convey what it's trying to say and to avoid misinterpretations. Because while it is very important to have ambitions in life and be courageous in trying to execute your plans, I'd be very careful about shutting off those doubtful thoughts. I think the most important thing is to learn to effectively monitor them and to distance yourself from them just enough to be able to try to use them as a vehicle to improve yourself. Doubtful thoughts could be seen as a little pessimistic friend of yours who always finds and points out flaws in you or in your plans. And you just thank for the thoughts, dissect the thoughts, take what you deem valuable in some way and throw the rest away. It's also important to learn to recognize dogmatic thinking and trying to get rid of it. Sometimes when you start to think about the reasons for a particular doubt, it comes down to conventions and how things are usually done. And that's a clear sign that you need to try to look at it in purely logical and ethical perspectives, and from there try to decide whether it's warranted or not. Sometimes a single thing in life can cause a multitude of feelings, both in good and bad. Another user writes, "I guess music is my source of all those things. Self-doubt, joyful excitement, and safe havens. I often doubt if I'm talented enough to do music seriously. But as music gives my life so much meaning and those moments of joyful excitement, I know I'll keep doing it anyway. When I feel down, listening or playing music is likely to make me feel better. After hours and hours of practicing, the moment when things click for a piano piece just gives me so much joy." If something becomes a really important and central part of your life, it's likely to become just like that. Doubting your skills as a musician sounds awfully familiar, but it's true that those experiences of joy and success make it worth it, and more. What's also like that for me is my family. There's not many things that have made me doubt my worthiness as much as my kids have, but in turn they give me so much joy and love and happiness that it way overpowers any of the negative things. Family is also definitely my safest haven when things get dark. When I get too caught up in my own thoughts, nothing grounds me faster than spending some time with our 1-year-old. I derive great satisfaction from solitary pursuits such as reading, walking, playing music, and solving crossword puzzles. However, for me, the purest, rarest moments of the most acute and piercing joy come not from my own concerns, but from something completely outside myself, when unexpectedly and fleetingly an involuntary glance or smile exposes for a brief moment what might be called the very heart of another person. That's very beautifully put. Genuine, positive human connection would seem like one of the most essential and powerful experiences there is for a human. Even I, as a 97% introvert, can wholeheartedly say that I need a lot of human contact to be happy. Humans have evolved to be a social species, and there's a lot of straight up biological mechanisms that seem to point to the source of our very social nature. And it might be that way, that by sheer chance and thousands of generations of little evolutional changes, our brains were coded to seek meaningful relationships to other humans, because it strengthened the social bonds in a group and increased the ability to effectively gather resources and to adapt to new environments, and so to reproduce and to keep the offspring alive. But I also think it's not always the most progressive way of thinking to lump these hugely complex topics of life into these strictly biological processes. We know so much about the world, but we also still know so little. Many of the biggest questions of life are still largely unanswered. There's a lot of great theories, but there's very little of hard, unquestionable facts about how and why the universe came to be, how life came to be, what is consciousness and how it works, where is everyone else in this universe, etc., etc. To me at least, that feels like a very humbling realization and an important thing to remind myself about sometimes. As a side note, I feel like I can't escape the connotations to religious beliefs when I talk about stuff like why the universe exists. Just to be clear, I'm largely agnostic and I don't affiliate with any specific religion. I do think it's unlikely that the existence of our reality is just a coincidence. But to me, the question why the universe exists is just as valid for an atheist as to a theist. Going back to the topic of human connection, one of the key values and missions I have for this Songs for Humanity project is increasing our sense of unitedness to the rest of humanity. At times it feels like we are living in a time of increasing political separation and rising of nationalism and populism and the start of the catastrophic consequences of climate change caused by humans. But I want to think humanity is still heading towards a better future as a whole, despite some temporary setbacks. And it is by many metrics, and I think there's a growing pressure to make big changes to those things that are in a bad shape currently. I certainly feel really small with my impractical creative skills to make any meaningful progress. But with this project, I want us to be a part of making humanity more united when heading to our future, however tiny little part that might be. Hopefully this all feeds into that growing united pressure that comes from inside the individuals, because that's the most effective kind of societal change. Maybe someday when the whole of humanity has already merged with a super intelligent AI to become a one giant collective digital superconsciousness, maybe then we'll look back at these days and see that we were living in a very defining time period in humanity's history. Anyways, thank you for taking the time to think about these things with me. I hope you have a great day, and I hope you find lots of things to be joyful and happy and thankful about. And thank you to the people who left comments in the Songs for Humanity subreddit. If you haven't seen the subreddit yet, go check it out and take part in the conversations and create new conversations. Have a nice day and love a lot.